Hold on, let's try this preview style garden report. I don't know how many of you are going to join, but there's
I
plenty
wonder
to
how
talk
many
about.
people have given up. Do you think
I'll tell
everyone's going to watch the game tonight?
I'll tell you right now. I think casuals will. Here's the thing. I think casuals will tell you that they won't, but they will. Or they might look at the score and wait and not tune in later because they want to prove, like, I don't even care anymore. I think the majority of people will. I think you've invested this much in this team this long, you're going to go down with the ship. But yeah, I think there's some people that have mentally given up. I actually think we're at the point where I don't think they can lose tonight in the sense that everyone's already buried them and called them a bunch of losers. So if they win, okay, see what happens. And if they lose, it's like an end to a misery and a fate that you've already kind of accepted. So if they go down like chumps, how much worse are we going to say? What worse is going to be said about them that wasn't said after game 3? Like, that's rock bottom already. It's almost a foregone conclusion they go down in game 4. If they win, they surprise you. They give you something to play for. They come home. They make it 3-2. And all of a sudden, wait a second, pressure's on Miami. So again, obviously 3-0 is 3-0 and it hasn't, nobody's ever won for a reason. It's hard. But again, you win that one game and you come home at 3-1 and you can make it 3-2. You've really flipped things, okay? Because what have we seen twice in the last 2 years the Celtics do? At 3-2, win a must-win game 6 on the road in order to earn a game 7. Well, win a game 6. So they've done it before. And that's why the one is the one. And that's why you're hearing all of the stuff about today. You win one, you come home. You're supposed to win that one too. And who knows? So again, I think a lot of people can hope a lot of things, Bobby. Hope that the shooting variance kind of changes a little bit here. Miami's been hot as hell. Hopes that the Celtics actually have a little fight in them. I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens tonight. Bobby's wearing a bucket hat, which means he's obviously in Miami. Bobby talked to the team today. So, like, what's your sense of the mood, Bobby?
They don't sound together to me. And
do they look like a team that is mad and ready and mad as hell and not going to take it anymore?
No, and we talked to Rob and Smart and Brown as well today, and there's some obvious frustration, but you don't sense that anger and togetherness and rallying cry to circle around and charge forward. And yeah, they're going to say we believe we can win and we're capable and all the rest. They're going to say the right things, but do you believe it? The thing that's missing for me, because they can say they're angry, they can say they want to come back, and they can say they're able to, but how are they going to do it? They changed the starting lineup last game, and it didn't really work at all. You have able to stop the Heat's ball and stop them from getting quality looks. So I don't know what's going to change defensively, especially when you sent Rob to the bench and barely played him last game. And then on top of that, I don't know how you're going to free up Brown and Tatum because they're getting run off the three-point line. They're both shooting terribly, and the guards haven't been able to set them up in the right spots to get them going. I mean, those two got outscored by Gabe Vincent last game. So that's what's missing for me is the strategy. Like, what's the adjustment that's coming? What's the game plan? How are they going to counteract all these things that the Heat have been doing? You do expect the Heat to come back down to earth. I mean, they're shooting 50% from mid-range. They're 48 from above the break and in the corners on threes. So that's going to come down. But how are you going to get your offense going? That's a huge question for me right now because they're just stalling against the zone. They're turning it over 10, 15 times a game. They're just so dysfunctional on that end, and I don't hear any solutions.
I don't either.
This isn't just an effort thing, John. Effort became a big issue in the second half. They quit, but they've been out-schemed, out-maneuvered. That's the story of this series.
So they have, but a little bit of shooting variance going in their favor does flip things. Game 1 flips on shooting in that case. If they were each team was at their level, okay, that's just a game the Celtics lost. Miami played better. You weren't as furious about the way it went down. I mean, there were some late game problems. You're always worried in a late game situation how they're going to execute against this team. And it's not heartening that they've gone down in flames the way they have. But if you flip it and the Celtics have a hot shooting night and the Heat go back to normal, you're looking at a comfortable win regardless of adjustments. They haven't had one of those. I thought they'd get one or two of those under their belt and have to win a couple of toss-ups to win this series. They haven't gotten one. So the sad thing is you actually have to do what you've always done and pray for better results. The reason we talk about effort is when the shots don't fall, they slump their shoulders, they complain to officials. And I watched that whole game back, Bobby. I was disgusted, even knowing the result, disgusted at what I saw. It was, as Barkley said at halftime, beyond embarrassing. I know, like, the I know ball crowd wants to talk about just the shooting and this and that. It's a combination of both. When the Celtics shots aren't falling, they get dejected. They are looking for someone to help them out rather than helping themselves out. Last year, that team helped itself out with defense. When the offense went to shit against Golden State, you could still count on the defense, despite some issues with drop coverage and leaving some three-point shooters open as a tactical decision that burned them. The effort was there the whole time. When you hear someone like Robert Williams at shoot-around, Bobby, or was it practice yesterday, saying, I don't think the effort has been there, that's freaking Rob is. Who's Rob calling out? You think he's calling out Al? You think he's calling? Who's he calling out? He's calling out the stars. Like, the effort's not there. Guys aren't playing. They're not. They're not. I'm sorry. The amount of times I watched Tatum or Brown jog back into frame after having been upset that they missed a shot or complaining to the referees. It wasn't just the famous one with Jalen, in the first thing. They did it over and over and over again. Just, that's a choice, okay? Get the F back on defense. What are you doing? Simple stuff. And the rest of it is communication. Like,
I don't think there's any communication.
They're just not communicating at all. The amount of Duncan Robinson shouldn't have one layup in a series, let alone like 3 or 4 per game. What are you doing there?
Well, this goes back to my point on identifying issues and taking accountability. I don't know if it was just a phrasing thing or a slip of the tongue, but Brogdon yesterday saying, I haven't really talked to many guys since yesterday. It wasn't 7 a.m. We were at the hotel. It was, pushing 1:30, 2 o'clock. Did they have a film session? Did they get into each other on some stuff? It's almost like, let's just roll the ball out there, do what we do, and hope it goes better. There's got to be some adjustments. There's got to be some individual accountability between people, but it's just boiling down to, we didn't try hard enough, and we got to do a better job, and this and that. Things we hear from this team all the time.
Yeah.
And the coaching thing's another thing. We're going to keep hitting on that. The two biggest things in this series that continue to baffle me are why they're not, and John Corrales got into this yesterday in a little exchange with Joe, why they're not hunting quality shots, why they're not hunting mismatches. And Joe, to his usual stance, said, there's no guarantee you're going to get a better shot. We got to take the first best shot available. We got to take the quick shot. This is what was driving Josue crazy after last game, is that they were just launching threes up there the moment they could find one. They weren't running long possessions. They aren't doing these layers of passing that we've seen from them in the past when they've been at their best. So that's a coaching thing. That's what they're telling them to do.
I know.
And then the cheating off the ball. I mean, you mentioned that in game 1, John.
I was losing my mind.
They keep doing it. Caleb Williams 10 for 21 from 3 now. When are you going to start covering them?
It's not complicated. Again, you play Jimmy straight up. If you look for a rare opportunity to double, look, they trapped him once last game, forced a turnover. You can do that if in an opportune time. You just have to be smart every once in a while.
And you have to rotate behind it, and that goes back to effort.
And that's effort, and that's knowing if that comes, I got to get over there, and I got to get to the strong side. They're leaving strong side shooters open. It just blows my friggin' mind. So it is some really basic stuff that they're just messing up on, and you're seeing them upright, kind of walking through screens, giving up easy screens, not fighting, not trying to keep guys in front of them, giving away paint touches left and right. It's an effort thing. So it's a choice. So
the paint touch thing's big too. I think they actually played something I didn't see the video, but someone had a screen grab of Spo in the locker room, and it was like, when we get a paint touch, we're scoring 1.6 points per possession, which is just a ridiculous number.
Yeah. So again, this is where the mathematical people talking about shooting the threes, Celtics aren't shooting, they're just missing. They're not just missing. There's a greater likelihood of them hitting their shots if they do it the right way. They're not approaching how they're going about getting their shots the right way. Last game was, you're right. I mean, and I know they got down, so they were trying to jack it early in the clock. You can't be taking 20-second possessions to get a better three than the first open one. So I don't fault them necessarily for what they were doing in the third quarter there when they took a lot of early in the clock threes. They had to, at this point, hope they started going down and they got hot. They were hoping for law of averages and they didn't get it. But they haven't been working for them really all series. And when they do work it, they're not working it by moving the ball. They're just holding and holding and holding and isoing what they might think is a mismatch, realizing they don't have it, and then just kind of desperation heaving it to whoever's available, and then trying to find a good shot with 8 seconds left on the clock. And that's infinitely harder to do. When you commit to doing that and the process and attacking the paint and drive and kick and then see what's up there and going up strong and trying to get to the free throw line, good things happen. That's the good offense. They're allowing themselves to devolve into the bad offense of holding the ball too long or just jacking it at the first opportunity they get. So that's one problem for sure, Bobby. And it's not, I don't know that they're going to fix themselves. That's who they've been all year. It really comes down to they need some of these shots to fall to start to feel good about themselves, because they can't play good defense when their offense is poor. This team hasn't done it all year.
Yeah.
They really can't. So it's sad. What's sad is the shots have to fall.
Yeah. And I love these shot clock stats. They're 21% between 22 and 18 on the clock. They are 30% between 18 and 15. And then if you look at late in the clock, 60% when it's 7-4, and then the last 4 seconds of the clock, you're usually crap. But they haven't hit one. They haven't hit a single three in the last 4 seconds of the clock here.
No, so, and they're feeling sorry for themselves. This is what's bugging me the most, is like it's a woe is me attitude rather than a get mad attitude. Somebody put it in my Twitter, Bobby, and I thought this was a pretty smart comment. It's like this whole like don't let us hold on one second. Don't let us win one, sort of thing. The question comes down to, I don't know whether they can do it. The question comes down to, do they hate losing? And I don't know, do you get the feeling this team hates losing? Everyone says the same thing. The way we do things here, our culture, be true to ourselves, do what we do, have each other's back. We want it. We hate losing. Do you believe them? Do you believe they hate losing? Or do you believe they accept losing? And then, in fact, not only accept it, instead of getting mad about it, instead of getting mad that you're being humiliated, they're looking at each other like wondering like, well, this guy's not doing it, so why should I do it? And that's what it feels like to me. Like, get mad, dude. Like, show it somehow. Show somebody that you care. I haven't seen it. I don't know how much they hate it. This, oh, shucks, what are you going to do? We played bad. We'll just have to play better next game. That's a weird mentality that they all seem to possess.
Yeah, especially doing it over and over again. And maybe it's because they haven't felt the consequences of it yet. And this is why we're going to get into off-season changes. You're not just going to have another chance and another chance and another chance. This is going to end at some point. The window's going to close, and they don't seem to realize that. And when we say they, you keep going back to Brown and Tatum. Horford, a guy like him's been around the league and saw that Atlanta window come to an end. And even the first Boston window when these guys were younger. Brogdon certainly has played for like a new coach every year, it feels like, of his career, and seen his Bucks run end and the Pacers run he went on end very quickly. So these guys understand it, and I think they get what needs to be done, and that's why you're hearing them say what they say. Even a guy like Smart, who's been on bad teams, mediocre teams, great teams, he's seen it all. All Brown and Tatum have seen is winning, and this is going to be for them the first massive disappointment of their careers. You lose the finals last year, it stunk, and you probably should have won, but it was still an achievement going from where they did early that year to reaching the finals. This is going to be a catastrophe, and I don't think they realize the kind of stakes that are on the line right here in terms of their futures, in terms of their ability to win, even as soon as next year. So, back to your point about the competitiveness and the pride. Gary's pressed hard on this the last couple of days, and he did ask Jalen today. When when Jimmy's doing the timeout sign and these guys are embarrassing you, do you need to push back? Do you need to have a little confrontation there? Because that's what Grant did, right, in game 2, and no one defended him on it. Smart did it a little recklessly in game 3, and I thought almost got himself ejected with that swing, I think, at Martin. But, it was a clap back. And Brown and Tatum are just either Brown's falling in the lane and putting his hands up looking at someone else, or Tatum's looking at the refs, as you say. It's almost like they're not playing the Heat. It's like they're playing themselves and the refs. Is there any competitive fire between them and the other side? Any desire to strike back? Or are they just in their own heads?
I can't figure it out.
Refs?
I can't figure it out. And then again, like I said, is you've got like, kind of general media, and the easy, that's the thing, Bobby. I'm embarrassed to use that easy take of Hart wanting it more. It just sometimes is the most simple thing, like it sometimes is that, like, of course there's shooting variance, and when a team gets hot, but that would be the case if the Celtics were playing well. Forget about what the Heat are doing from the 3-point line. The Celtics offensive rating is 110. It would be third from the bottom in the NBA if this were a full season. Okay? Like offense. So they're bad offensively, period. And it's not just bad luck. They're just not working for it. This idea of saying, like, well, if all these 3-point shots didn't go in, or if the Celtics 3-pointers fell, it'd be like a boxer saying, like, I wouldn't have lost a fight if the other guy didn't punch me in the face so many times. Like, no shit. Like, that's how it works. Like, you're allowing the Hawks to punch you in the Hawks.
That's what Tatum said after last game. He just missed shots.
It's not. You're not working hard enough for the shots, okay? You're not. And then you're not. So the offense is disjointed. These are not all. The Heat are getting wide open looks, okay? The 23 out of their 29, 28 or whatever it was attempts were wide open looks. So they're getting good looks. They are still hitting a ton of them. Good shooters are going to knock down open looks in the high 40s, mid 40s, Bobby. So fine. They shot 50% 2 games. You're giving up looks that are going to result in 45% field goal percentage. It's not ridiculous. These looks
are wide open.
It's not ridiculous. A good shooting team or decent shooters knock them down at 4. Duncan Robinson is going to hit 60% of wide open threes. Sorry. That's how it's going to go. You can't allow them. So Vincent.
And look at how much flexibility the Heat play with on offense. They'll give Bam the ball at the top of the elbow and let Jimmy be a cutter. As we said, Jimmy will run the pick and roll for Bam. They're unpredictable, and they can go to other areas if they get cold. They have a great transition game that they create off of stops. There's just a great fluidity to their game, and it still is shocking to me, John, to watch them play with this level of execution offensively after they played like a lottery team on that end all year. But Bam was saying yesterday, we started hitting shots. Like, our process was always there. We just started hitting shots, and that's credit to them for staying with a good process. And why can't Tatum back cut off of Al?
I don't know.
Jimmy does. Like, why can't they do some of these things Miami does? And that's where you do look at the coaching. Like, again,
I'll get into the coaching in a minute. I want to say thank you for the super chat. We did talk about this earlier. Thanks, Kevin, for everybody who does contribute here. Anything that comes in on super chats gets redistributed to hosts, so we are super grateful for that. And we did talk about it. It's a cliche thing, but winning one game does change things a little bit because you're coming back home for 5. So it is not ridiculous to think that this could change the conversation a little bit. So we did talk about there, but Bobby, get back to it I want you to get back to the coaching thing that we talked about, because I do want to play some sound bites in regards to these guys continuing to defend their coach, because they are at this point. They're not giving up. Before we do that, we want to tell you first about one of our sponsors. That's FanDuel, our exclusive wagering partner and a partner of the NBA throughout the playoffs here. And again, obviously, we've still got what's left of the conference finals, however long the Celtics can swing it. And then the NBA finals featuring the Nuggets and
2 sweeps potentially in the finals.
2 sweeps potentially. Crazy. If you laid that down, if you laid down Heat, sweep, you're probably quitting your job right now. So kudos to you if you did that. For those of you who want to get in on the action, head over to fanduel.com/Boston. Take advantage of a no sweat first bet up to 1,000 in bonus bets when you lose your first bet. Download the app, super easy to use. You get paid right away when you win. You never have to wait for it. You never have to worry. So again, no sweat first bet up to 1,000 bonus bets when you go to fanduel.com. For those who want to see it, let's put this up and you can see it nice and big. Ta-da! FanDuel.com, no sweat first bet. Bobby, let's get back into it with the coaching. The big story is Joe on the hot seat if they get swept or if they go out in 5 here? I don't know. We've talked about the disconnect quite a bit here with this team. And whether it's real or not, it's a really interesting conversation because we don't know. Like, this appears to be Brad's boy, but you could have Wick sitting upstairs like, I paid what for what, and I'm about to pay what for what. Like, I'm going to pay $300 million to Jalen and then $320 to Tatum while this guy learns how to do this job. That can't be real. Like, you have no idea what conversations are being had behind the scenes. Everyone thinks they know this conversation and how it goes, but it really comes down to, if he's lost the faith of the guy all the way upstairs signing the checks, it's over. If he's lost the faith of the players, it's over. Yeah. And I don't know what that is. I really don't know whether he has or hasn't. I'm not sure. What we've heard in the last few days, Bobby, is a lot of defending Joe. And taking the bullet a little bit, but I'll play a soundbite here, and then I want to hear what you had to say about it.
There's a report out there that says the locker room has never gotten over the firing of Ime Udoka. Is the coaching still an issue playing into what's happening?
No. No, regardless if Ime was here or not, we're the ones out there playing. And we got to go out there and play. Joe does a great job of putting us in the right positions. They come over the game plan. It's on us. It's only so much that any coach can do for you out there as a player. At some point you just got to, look at yourself and figure it out.
Joe said he put this all in Excel. He took a lot of the blame after last game. He said he's the reason that you guys lost that defensive identity. What do you guys think of him kind of putting this all in himself? And why do you think he did that?
That's Joe. That's who Joe is. He's a competitor, and he wants to be perfect. He wants to do everything right, but it's not on Joe. Joe can't go out there and check himself in the game, So it's on us. We appreciate Joe taking it, but everything isn't on Joe.
Front office, everybody's in this together. Joe doesn't take fall on the sword for anybody.
Jalen too loud there, but he said the same thing. Joe's fallen on his sword a little bit. Audio was a tad distorted, so I spared your eardrums there. That's the right thing to say. Do you believe them?
No, I don't. No, I mean, especially Marcus, after what we heard him say last round, the rightfully so comments and all of that. I think here's the thing. They're doing what he wants them to do, right? The question is, do they believe in it? And Tatum talked that shoot around before game 3 about it. Got asked, can you cut after you got off the double team? Can you do some other things to free yourself up? And he's like, yeah, we want to run the 4-on-3 after I get doubled. And all these different things Joe talks about. But do they really believe in it? Are they continuing to execute it at the highest level? I mean, the quick shots are supposed to prevent turnovers. And you just see Tatum and Brown dribbling against the zone again and again and turning it over. And this is the question the team's going to have to answer. Now, of course, you had the report from Yahoo and Fisher today, who I do think is great, saying that, as of a week ago, this front office was emphatic in its defense of Missoula. But a lot changed over the last week in terms of where this team's at and where they're going. So, like you said, John, first exit interviews. Do the players support Joe at that point? Of course, they're going to say the right thing down 3-0 with another game here. They're not going to have any more distractions coming their way heading into this game tonight or any problems between one another. They're just trying to win another game here. But when they get swept or when they lose in 5 or whenever they're going to lose here, at that point, what does everybody have to say about this coaching situation? I think you've seen different guys wonder, especially Brogdon and Brown at certain times, about game plans. And, I think you've seen some skepticism here over what the approach is. And even earlier in the season, John, the amount of threes they were taking, Brown and Tatum both commented on that. I think you keep Joe if you believe in his vision and say, let's give him some more time to get there. But if you look at this year and say, this went sideways because Joe wasn't taking the right approach, who cares about the money that's left?
They're not looking at it the right way. It's the conversation is more nuanced than does Joe deserve more time? Can Joe be better? The question is, can you afford to allow him that time? The answer already for this year might have been no. You may not have been able to afford this guy an opportunity to grow with the title window that might be expiring after this year or maybe next year. I don't know how much longer you have because, again, you don't have talent coming up the pipeline, and outside of Tatum and Brown, you don't have guys who are going to be getting better.
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, Rob went backwards. I don't know that if you had the ascent of Rob Williams and something else below, you could say they're gonna reload on the fly a little. They're not. Like you're reaching. Al Horford is trending towards 15 minutes a game next season, and which means someone like Rob carries the load. And if not that, whatever person
you might be starting to talk about taking a small step back so you have something more sustainable going forward.
You may have to, and that's why, Bobby, every time we talk about these trades, about trading 12 draft picks for an absolute hitch your wagon to a star, I'm willing to do that. But anything short of that, you're kneecapping yourself a little bit because you've got to take some swings. You have to have cheap players on your roster. You have to find your Tyrese Maxey who can be that third scorer or who can do other things. And not everybody can. Picking late in that first round, it's a crapshoot. Those guys don't hit very often, but not hitting ever or not taking any swings at all creates an environment where you really can't. There's nothing you can do. They don't have the money to spend anymore once they supermax these two guys. They have to get cheaper. We'll have that conversation after the season, if and when they go down. As far as the Joe stuff goes, it really just comes down to whether or not there's buy-in. And this is something I talked about. I tweeted something today.
Do you think there's buy-in?
So here's what I tweeted today, just to kind of start a conversation. It was, I don't think the question is whether Joe lost the locker room. I don't know that he fully had it. Not in the sense that I think they're professional enough to understand and respect the position of head coach. It's not a bunch of petulant superstars that want to bury a guy and blame him for their problems. I don't think that's what they do. But without any cachet or proof of performance, it's really hard to have full buy-in because you just have to have blind faith in, I believe what this guy's saying will work. And if they didn't get off to that 20-5 start, this could have gotten ugly much, much faster. He bought himself a lot of currency with that, which is like, see what we did there? If we just go back to that, we'll be good. And that, I think, buoyed him through a lot of those tougher times during the middle of the season when you kept saying time and again, lost our defensive identity.
All the Brogdon stuff yesterday points toward that too, and I know you probably have some of that queued up too. But
I can pull that out there if you want me to play it, and then you can respond to it. What Malcolm Brogdon had said.
Yeah, those comments about the defense and getting away with stuff.
Let me see which one I have. I'll put this up here now.
I think guys are upset. Haven't really talked to many guys. Haven't gotten together with guys yet today. But like any other, I think loss or any other loss, we're gonna try to bounce back tomorrow.
How stunning is it that you're down 3-0 in the series, though?
It's definitely stunning. This is not something I think anybody would have predicted, but this is the scenario right now, and we got to try to climb our way back out.
So that wasn't the one on the defense, Bobby. Paraphrase what you were talking about there, because he did say they lost their defensive identity somewhere along the way.
Yeah, he said that, and the money quote, I think, especially when it comes to any disbelief in Joe in the room, he said, I think we've taken a few steps back in these playoffs overall. It's showing because we're playing a consistent, well-coached team. But I think in the Atlanta series, I think in the Philly series, we got away with things that now are biting us. It's mainly on the defensive end. We haven't been consistently great defensively all year long, and that was this team's identity last year. I think that slipped away from us. We've had spurts where we've been great defensively, but not consistently. And honestly, we've struggled in every series we've played. I mean, that's what we've been saying here on the show.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it.
So, yeah, I mean, everything we've seen and questioned throughout the year, they have too. And they got by and they didn't bring it up and they didn't address it. And now that it's hurting them, it's just open season on criticism and finger pointing and whatever's going to come next here. So that's a lack of leadership. And yeah, that's Joe. But like we said the other day, should he have been the leader of this team? I mean, he never embraced that position. He said, these guys are leading us. And was anyone individually really leading this group? I think you see a passiveness toward that from Tatum. Yep. I think Brown tries, but he's not the best player, so he's not able to fully assume that position. Similar situation with Smart, and of course Al, who's a role player at this point. He can't be the face of this team. So you just have a bunch of guys trying to do it. Brogdon's trying to do it from the bench. And I don't think anyone succeeded in that leadership role this year. And that's something Nick's been saying all year, I think, that's hit the mark, is that they just don't have strong leadership here. I think at this point you're seeing a disconnect in terms of how to proceed and how to move forward. Different guys are saying, let's do the defense thing. And Joe's like, all right, let's do the defense thing, double big for a couple games. But then it goes bad and he's right back to his lineup in 46 threes. So Smart said today there's not a disconnect. I think however you want to describe that, and no one said that Joe's lost the locker room, but I think disconnect is the right way to describe it. And he said that too.
I use the golf analogy all the time, and I think a lot of people believe this. I think fans do it all the time, but I think players believe it too. You go out and you birdie the last hole that you play, or one day you shoot an 80, and you're like, wow, I might be a single digit handicap. But if every other day you're shooting in the mid 90s, like that's who you are, but in your mind, the Celtics always think of themselves as who they are at their absolute best. They have to do the math and figure out when do they actually do that. I remember you might have put this number out there, but when they shoot better than 40% from three, they were like, whatever.
They had one loss all year.
One loss. But that was only something like 35 out of 80 games that they did that. And then when they shot less than 40, they were 29 and 28 or something like that. So for 55 games, they are the other version of themselves. And only for 35 are they the top level team. So they're a juggernaut for 40% of the time, and they're dead average for 60. Okay. So that's not great. You're relying on one thing. And if you don't do that one thing, you're a dead average team because you're not finding other ways to win. It's not on the days our three doesn't fall, we lean on our awesome defense and we still do that. I don't know what numbers are like league wide, so you need some context to fully understand that number. But for them, it just seemed very clear. The threes fall, they run, they bury you. They don't. Then they're scratching and fighting and clawing, and it's anybody's game, and they can lose to anyone. And so that's what's happening to this team. They're built an identity around something they can only do 35 or 40% of the time. That's not a great feeling. Whereas your defense, you knew if you came out and played last year's solid shutdown defense, that you had a chance with anything. I mean, their offense, Bobby, went to absolute shit against Golden State, and they still were competitive the entire series.
Right, they had a 2-1 lead.
And they were competitive even the games they lost. They were so bad on offense, they couldn't do it. I understand looking at the team and thinking fix offense first is more important, and I understand the mentality that the defense will be there when we need it because we've got some of the same personnel. It then comes down to that thing we talked about at the beginning, which is effort. It is a choice at this point. And the problem is you don't practice something enough. You don't get into the habits. You might forget what it takes to play that type of defense. And it's not ingrained in them the same way it was last year to be able to just lean into that. And again, back to the coach. I don't know if they have the coach who's instilling that into them as the most important thing. You wonder how many games they went back to the drawing board, Bobby. And Joe said, okay, we lost. We gave up 128 points, but it doesn't matter if we hit our threes, and like, I don't know how many times they leaned back on fix the offense and the defense will be fine as a mentality. And so that's kind of why you're at where you're at right now. You're watching both things fail. One, because of your just happened to go cold, and the other because you didn't really emphasize it.
Yeah. And we always split hairs about how Joe handled himself publicly in terms of not criticizing these guys or not even pointing out things they need to improve on. It's like, whatever, it's just lip service. But I wonder if that's how they sort of handle things behind the scenes this year, is if we do the right things mathematically, if we make the right decisions and play the right style, win or lose, as long as we're going through the process right, we'll be okay. So was there any loss that rattled them this year that made them have to criticize each other? That was another big Ime thing last year, is that we got to all be able to criticize each other publicly. We all got to be able to come out here and
thanks, Marcus,
have accountability. So I don't hear a lot of that this year either. It's just that whole we thing, we as a group, and no one's really calling each other out. And it doesn't have to be finger pointing or offensive. It's just about making sure everybody's in the right position. The defense, especially, who's breaking down, who's not in the right spots here. Are they even looking at defensive film a lot of the time?
But that's the thing, is like, how are you as a fan right now looking at this, or as an analyst looking at what's going on with this team and just simply distilling the Celtics failure down to, that the Heat are shooting threes at a clip that they're not expected to? Like, are you not watching and seeing what kind of shots the Celtics are giving up? How they're basically like giving away the paint the whole time? How they're not committing on the defensive end in any way and allowing Miami to basically get wherever they want on the floor at any time? There is zero resistance on defense. You're telling me it's just shots happen to be falling and that's the difference here? Like, Miami is creating these because you are allowing them to get whatever they want whenever they want it. These are not late in the clock, person in your face, Jason Tatum step back contested threes. They are wide open threes that they got off of good drives and kicks, or sagging off a defender and leaving somebody open. That's what they're getting. They're getting it, or going under on a screen and allowing Duncan Robinson to just step into a top of the key 3-pointer, which is a friggin' layup for him, over and over and over again. Are they hotter than they should be? Yeah. You're giving them everything.
Well, look at the pace they're playing with too. They get into the half court quick.
Gone.
And if the Celtics stop something initially, they'll run something else. They'll throw it back out and have something else ready to go. There's so much flexibility here, whereas the Celtics are looking for that first look and just firing it up there, and they're moving too slow, and they're not able to turn defense into offense because the defense is struggling so much. So they're limited in the kinds of looks that they're able to get here. And there's a greater ability, along with the offensive rebound that Miami has pulled off in this series. They have so many different ways to score. And that's the story of this series right now, is that they've just been such a more dynamic team, a team that has flexibility, a team that can put a bunch of different looks out there on both ends of the floor, and scoring to their bench unit. I mean, what Duncan Robinson was doing in the last game was embarrassing. Not to say Robinson's not a good player, but he's attacking Tatum off the dribble, and Tatum swinging his arm looking for a push-off call.
That killed me. You just got beat off the dribble by Duncan Robinson, and you turn immediately and start doing this. Oh my God, have some freaking pride, man. It's like losing to your little kid, like your kid brother in one-on-one and complaining about fouls. It's embarrassing, like come on, man. That's the whole thing. It's embarrassing. Have some pride. You look ridiculous complaining all the time. Ridiculous.
And guess what we haven't mentioned, because anyone who's defending Joe is going to say, oh, a timeout. The Lakers called timeout last night and the Nuggets went on a run. No one's even talking about timeouts here. But if you want to, that third quarter, second quarter, last game, these stretches where they're just calling one timeout while the Heat are going on some massive runs. It's tough to defend that too right now, especially when Spoelstra's out there firing off timeouts after 4-0 runs just to stop the Celtics from gathering any momentum themselves. Again, I don't think that's like a catch-all solution to issues here, but it is kind of that definitive storyline that's followed Joe all year. Is like, all right, the timeout thing keeps kind of biting you. You're going to call some here? You leaving some on the table? I thought there was like a challenge opportunity late in the game too. I think Tatum charged in that game. I forget if it was game 2 or game 3, but they didn't really challenge and just left it on the table, and they left the timeout on the table at the end of that game. So
yeah, but I also have seen them call timeouts and then he come out at 10-2 run after the timeout. So again, it's just there's no empirical evidence to say the timeouts work or don't work. I think that's been one of the more overplayed things, in terms of assessing what Joe Mazzulla does and doesn't do, because it's really simple, low-hanging fruit.
yeah.
That we can pull up on. It ultimately is going to come down to we've talked about this a ton. I'm sorry. This is how it works. You prop people up and you tell them how great they are, and then they make all NBA teams 2 times in a row and they finish top 5 in MVP voting. That means you've gotten all the praise and adulation and props from everybody, and the awards and the accolades and the Supermax contract, which means you're carrying the full friggin' freight. Stop making excuses for Tatum and Brown. It's them who are going to start this, both by their execution and their effort. And if they don't, this all goes to hell. It starts here. So this is as simple as it is. These guys have to play like their lives depend on it, or it's over.
Yeah, and Brown's been horrible here. He's obviously a guy who I've defended throughout the playoffs, but 3.7 turnovers
2
per
for
game.
20 field 3.10% field, 2 for 20 from 3.
Yeah.
And the worst defense I've ever, for a guy whose defense I've been dinging for 2 years, when people just continue to default and call him a 3-and-D guy, he has not played consistent defense for years. For years. I'm sorry. And he played 2 games against Philly and then stopped again. He's not locked in on defense. He is both, he gets lost, he turns his back, he makes bad decisions, bad reads, overhelps, doesn't get low enough, doesn't do a lot of things. He allows himself to get picked off very easily, just bad. And then you throw on top of that the forces on offense when things get difficult and dribbling with his head down and turning the ball over. He's playing. It's not a focused game right now. He's just hoping that what happens is going to be beneficial. It's going to work, but he's not going like the team, Bobby, as you said. Go through the steps. Trust the process. Do what it is you're supposed to do. You can still get beat, but it's less likely if you actually kind of go through the process.
Yeah, and he's not involved in the process on either end right now.
On either end. He's freestyling both ends.
Yeah, and he had comments after game 2, I think it was, where it's like, yeah, I got to figure it out. He's putting a lot of it on himself to find solutions to these problems. And I think defensively, he's looking at it and saying, I got to shut one guy down one-on-one. And offensively, I got to ISO and score a ton. And that's what's killing him here, is the Heat are really making him pay for being that one-dimensional on both ends here. And this is where we're going to have that conversation into the summer. $300 million looming for one of the most dynamic scorers in the league, but a guy who's up and down from 3, and the three-pointer has been that great boost for him into the playoffs. Tatum's a little down from 3 in the playoffs from where he was in the regular season. Brown's way up. But then this series, he hit 10%, and it's like, all right, mid-ranger's not there. That's a tough shot. Free throws, you're really struggling from there, and that continues to be a thing with him. The turnovers are killing him. And defensively, John, you're right. Is that going to get better after $300 million?
No, in fact, the worst thing is, I'm sorry, this is the trend, and this is how it goes. When guys kind of make it into that stratosphere, they're kind of hoping they can now enter the phase of their careers where they're not counted on to be defensive stoppers, where other people can kind of do the heavy lifting, when they can pick and choose their spots, when they can coast a little bit. It's kind of it's kind of what you get for being a superstar. We're not talking fully the level of James Harden, who never embraced things on the defensive end, but even guys like Kawhi Leonard, when healthy, you're not seeing him locking down the other team's top star like he did in his early days. Like you kind of transition out of that because there's an understanding the thing we're paying you to do is super valuable and super hard. And I don't expect that as you start to get older and get closer to 30, you can go 82 going full bore on defense and still give me what I need offensively. It's a little bit unrealistic, but that's the reality of where they're headed in their careers.
But he's 25, 26.
I know they're not there yet, but in the next couple of years, these guys kind of want to go into semi-retirement when it comes to the defensive end of things.
Oh, that's good.
But it's just how it works in the NBA, right? So that's the reality.
I'm more into considering this move than ever before if they go down here. Yeah. The 300 million's, I think, gonna hamstring you from making a decision like that later. And he just made All NBA, so it might be the peak of that value. I don't think it's an obvious move. I think it's a very tough decision. You have to see what you could even get back for him. But like you say, the defense has gone in the wrong direction here. He's not a guy who's complimenting or supporting Tatum. And listen, Tatum, I think, has his own issues, but you're not going to trade Tatum. It's just not feasible. And no one else on the roster has great value. So you have to consider it, I think, if they go down here. It's after a performance like this, especially in this spot.
Again, who knows what happens? It really comes down to, whether you want to retain the asset. I think you have no choice but to sign Jalen and then just figure it out after the fact. And, then in a year, determine if that's the direction you want to go. Can you re-sign Tatum, trade Jaylen Brown on a supermax deal to somebody else? Yeah, maybe,
Becomes a lot harder, though.
Why? Just because the money is hard to fit for
You're
people.
matching $50 million, yeah.
It's a very hard thing to do. You got to take on some dead weight in order to do it. But, that's where you start to do disgruntled superstar trades, not disgruntled, but I got a superstar and it doesn't quite fit. You got a superstar, it doesn't quite fit. Or I have a superstar and it's kind of redundant. You've got two awesome point guards. I've got two awesome wings. Maybe we do this. But those are the trades
I know
we've gotten used to
saying you just got to pay the guy what he wants. And Brown's going to go to the table this summer and say $295 million. And if the Celtics want to keep him, they have to do that. But if they moved him, and this is tricky, right, because of the agent stuff, and Brown does have an agent that represents a number of other Celtics, so this gets tricky here. But if someone else views Brown and says this guy's a $200 million player, whatever that number is that they can extend him at, because once he's out of Boston, he can't get that $300 million. That's in today's league, where these agents have a lot of power. That's tough to do, I think, if you're the Celtics and you want to operate with guys who also have that agent. That gets really tricky. But
the whole thing's a little bit messy, Bobby. But I mean,
for that other team, if they say, "Oh, Brown's our guy at $40 million a year instead of $50 million," you can actually do that at that point. But once you sign him for the $300, he's that $50 million guy a year, like Beal, like Lillard, like all these other guys. I mean, once you sign Brown to this contract, John, I think he's technically the highest paid player in the league. That's kind of how that works. A year in, year out, each guy takes that position.
Yeah, we'll see how, and it will be, you're right, because the salary cap grows and you get that 30%, 35% of the cap.
35 of this, yeah.
And then up and up it goes. So, that's what happens. It does keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But the reality is everybody wants the opportunity to doing
build around two guys like this.
You got most teams don't ever get that chance. The guys leave or they just don't have them. So the whole is Jalen worth it. The point is every team can afford two of these guys, and some teams don't even have one. So will some team want Jaylen Brown? Yes. It's hard. At the worst, he's the 25th best player in the NBA, 25th to 30. Most teams don't.
But John, we know this team. We know this team's amazing. We know they have all the talent in the world, and we know their two stars are better than anyone else's two stars. But why do they keep losing?
Again, Bobby, I've been pretty consistent about two things. I've never believed that the Jays, everyone loves to run when they win a game or when they both score 30 and say, see, what a dumb idea to split up the Jays. No, when they both score 30, it's just because they both hit their shots in the same game. They're not complimenting each other. I view them as totally not complimentary players. I never have. It makes no sense to me. I always thought a ball dominant point guard who could direct the offense was what they needed. They have 3 capable point guards, but none of those. So I've always thought that your second best player should come from a different position. Doesn't mean you can't also have wing depth and other people who are good 3 and D guys, but for your 2 stars to both be wings and not anything else and not be able to really run an offense through either one of them, it means they're not great to play off of one another. I'm sorry. I've never thought so. And I've always thought that Jaylen Brown does one thing really well, and everything else kind of mid to below average. And I think he's an outstanding scorer who's a very good, bucket getter, shot maker. Okay. Beyond that, I think he's actually subpar at most other aspects of basketball. So you know what it is. He's elite at the most important thing, and he's okay at everything else. So that's it. Sorry. Okay to not okay. Passing, defense, I'm sorry, not dribbling, below average. So, but scoring is the most important thing, I think, times a million. So he can do that. There's always going to be a market for JB, but you have to recognize what you've got in him. So I've been consistent there. I have to wrap at 4, Bobby. So I'm just going to ask you the 3-0 stuff. Can it happen?
It can, but not here.
Yeah.
You think? So here's the thing.
I need this in 1 minute or less.
There's only one way it happens. If they shoot over 40% for 4 straight games and the Heat dip below that 30% line for 4 straight games, which can happen, but anything in between, coaching, adjustments, effort, hustle, let up, the Heat aren't going to let that happen. But the shooting could swing to that level here, and that's the only way it's going to happen. And if that happens, this is a talented team. This is that team that just has way more talent than anyone else. And that's what we said to start the year, John. Are they that team that's just going to shoot 40% from 3 all year and kill everybody? I guess that's what we're going to see now.
Okay. So, and that's what it comes down to is I really think the only way they win is if they do the same thing. We heard the guys getting baited by a bunch of legacy media into this whole 3-0 stuff. Here it is.
Feel good about tonight? Feel very good about tonight. Don't let us get one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
No, just don't let us get one. So don't let us get
Kevin
this
Millar?
There you go.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you, guys.
Don't let us get one. Don't let us win tonight. That's our mindset. We let us get one. We feel confident. So we're going to come out and play free, play ready, and it should be fun.
Did you look at those 2004 Red Sox and they're down 3-0? You guys talk about that at all?
No, not really. But
we heard Marcus quote that.
I mean, now, of course, being down 3-0, I don't think we've ever prepared to be down 3-0 and in the playoff series, but.
I mean, it's like he's 25. I'm like, dude, I was 5 and living in Atlanta. No, I know nothing of the 2004 Red Sox. Every friggin' news package today. Well, it's the Celtics down 3-0. Has it ever been done before? Oh, blah, blah, blah. That sound of the 2004 Red Sox. The legacy guys loving the narrative. And I'll tell you this. I didn't believe the Red Sox could do it then, and I'll say that I was there. I would say games 4 and 5 of that ALCS were the 2 most, and nobody thought. They thought they were dead and buried. They lost 19-8 in game 3. The Yankees looked like a juggernaut. It looked like a hopeless. Probably for all of the titles I've seen with my own eyes, Bobby, I'd say those are the 2 most intense sporting events I've ever been to. And you did feel a little bit of magic. I don't know what you feel tonight. We'll see if they get a win. We're going to wrap it up. Live Garden Report coming up tonight. After the game, we want all of you in, win or lose. It could be our last one, so we want to make sure you're there. Tell your friends. We're going to wrap it up. Follow Bobby